Hello everyone and welcome back. As you can see, I'm filming this video at night and I feel a little bit like an angel with all of the lights glowing on me. Anyway, many people are curious about the statistics and scientific facts about street harassment, but sadly, there isn't very much data available to report on. Research on street harassment is sadly quite a rarity right now, and even when research is done on the subject, the studies are usually very small. This huge gap in research led Stop Street Harassment to commission a national study on the subject so that we could see on a large scale who exactly is experiencing street harassment, where they're experiencing it, who is doing it, how they're experiencing it, etc., etc., etc. The study involved 2,000 participants who were all over the age of 18 and from the United States. And we, as an organization, partnered with a research firm called GFK, which is a leading survey and research institute. And partnering with them, we developed an online survey for people to take and give their responses about street harassment and everything related to that. In addition, Stop Street Harassment conducted 10 focus groups in cities around the country to also learn a little bit more about the qualitative data on street harassment. If you want to see the full results and methodology, make sure to read the full report on the study, which is linked in the description box below. And in this video, to give you a little summary of the data, I'm going to go over the 5 most significant findings of the study. So let's get into it. Firstly, street harassment is a significant problem. Sorry to disappoint all the doubters out there, but it turns out that street harassment is a very real and very prevalent problem in our society. 65% of women reported experiencing at least one type and instance of street harassment in their lifetime. Men were also not excluded from this, as 25% of male-identified folks in the survey reported having had experienced street harassment as well. But it is important to note that of the 25% of men who did say they experienced street harassment, there was a disproportionate percentage of them who identified as LGBT. So cisgender and heterosexual men were not experiencing street harassment nearly as often as men who were gay, bisexual, or transgender. Also, people of color, low-income folks, and all those on the LGBT spectrum, not just men, but also women, were all disproportionately impacted by the effects of street harassment. Secondly, most people alter their lives in some way because of street harassment. The findings showed that people were likely to change some aspect of their behavior as a result of being street harassed. The most common response was to start constantly surveying your surroundings as a result of being street harassed, with 47% of women and 32% of men having chose this response. Other popular responses included avoiding going out alone, avoiding the location or area where the street harassment occurred, and also becoming more assertive in how they walked or acted in public. Thirdly, street harassment starts young. In fact, about half of people who experience street harassment, men and women, first experienced it by the age of 17. 17! And the number of men and women who reported first experiencing street harassment before the age of 17 were nearly identical. Although the percentages were nearly identical, the actual numbers of men and women were disproportionate, and 3 times the amount of women were actually harassed before the age of 17 than men were. Race and class also play a role here again, as those with a household income of less than $50,000 annually and those of Hispanic origin were both disproportionately likely to first experience street harassment by the age of 17. Fourthly, harassment happens in a lot of public spaces, not just on the street. Although most of the people harassed said that their harassment did occur when they were on the street or sidewalk, 67% of women and 43% of men. Interestingly, though, men were actually more likely than women to report being harassed at a beach, gym, or sporting arena, as well as in semi-public spaces like stores, shopping malls, or restaurants. There were no statistically significant differences in where people reported harassment based on race, sexual orientation, or income. Fifth and lastly, people believe that we can stop street harassment. So it turns out that there's hope because the majority of both men and women, 91% of respondents, which included both those who had been harassed and hadn't been harassed, believed that something should and could be done about street harassment. The most common suggestions about what to do about the problem from both men and women were installing more security cameras in public spaces and increasing the presence of law enforcement and neighborhood watch groups. The second most popular response was increasing the prevalence of workshops and classes to educate the community about street harassment, how to interact with strangers, and what to do if you witness or experience street harassment yourself. The third most common suggestion was to train more law enforcement and transit operators as to how to respond when they witness or someone reports an instance of street harassment to them. So, what do you think about this research? I would love to hear your thoughts if any of this was surprising or not surprising to you. And make sure to look at the link in the description to see the full results of the study, as well as a link to the Stop Street Harassment website where there's a more complete list of all of the studies that have been done on the subject. Thanks for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.